We are delighted to have Marie Costa. She's an incredible woman who has made a huge difference to Portsmouth, as she is the founder of Portsmouth African Women's Forum. Let's give a round of applause to Marie Costa.
I have been amazed at what people have done and continue to do. The International Women's Day, 8th of March, and the March month is usually used to celebrate what women do. What I noticed in this gathering, and I had hoped I was going to talk to a lot of ethnic minority women, so I've got it wrong. So I'm having to change what I'm saying because of that. But looking at it, I know Stephen Morgan is gone. Women are sitting at the back, men at the front. Should have been the other way around. Excuse me, Lord Mayor, I know you normally sit at the front, and Lady Mayoress. But this is a problem with us women. We undervalue ourselves all the time. I'm here to talk really about empowerment, empowering women, and especially ethnic minority women, because we lag behind. Becoming empowered means you become stronger. You learn the system. You know yourself. You know how to ask for things, and you ask for it, and you listen, you learn, and you pass it on to those who haven't the courage you have. Being equal in everything is what we all need. Men, women, no matter which ethnic group you belong to. But we as ethnic minorities have a problem in our society. 30 years ago, when I began in voluntary community activities, I couldn't have stood here and addressed anyone. Yes, I lacked confidence, and it's not what I want to do. I came to Portsmouth in '69 from Sunderland with 2 very young children as a single mother. The last thing I wanted to do wasn't get involved with voluntary activities. I wanted to put my head down, work, and protect my children. I came down as a community midwife. I was a trained nurse. But coming down here as a community midwife meant that I was given housing, and that's the first time I actually had a bedroom for each of my children, 2 children, a bathroom that I didn't have to share with the rest of the flats in the house I lived in. I lived in Somerstown. It was the best thing that ever happened to us. We had our own bedrooms, kitchen, dining room, bathroom, and another toilet. It was brilliant. My children went to St. John's Cathedral Primary School. We came there in December, and by Easter, I had the first report of my children from school here. There were 5 and 6 then. And the report said of my son, disruptive, backward, everything that is bad, he is. Now this boy, at 6 years old, from Sunderland, he could read small things before he went to school because I taught him. He could write his name. He couldn't say boo to anyone. I used to go on the street and fight his battles because people called him Blackie or whatever. And suddenly, he's in this school, he's being termed as being backward, disruptive, etc. I didn't recognize it. That's my first confrontation with the system. And it took courage, I can tell you that. So I went to the school and said, I don't recognize this report. What has he done? And I was told that he doesn't do any work in class, he talks, he messes about. There are 2 children at the desk, and he doesn't pay attention. So I went home, and my children usually sit there when I come back from parents' evening, waiting for the onslaught of what has gone wrong or not. And they looked at me, and I said to him, tell me, Anne-Marie does well, What's the matter with you? Why are you being disruptive in class? Tears flowed. I said, come on, tell me, because he knows he would have got a slap. In those days, no one can report me to anyone. Yes. So, he said, Mommy, the boy I sit with, he calls me names in his playgrounds, in school, if I don't mess about with him in class. And if I go to play, if I don't play with him, he and his gang will be calling me names. I said, all right, I'll sort this one out. Next day, make an appointment, go and see the headmaster. When I told him this, he said, oh, I'll get the teacher and see what she says. And the teacher said, oh yes, that boy he sits with, he comes from a deprived background. I didn't know anything about Portsea. He comes from Portsea, deprived background, troublesome. And I thought, troublesome child, a new child comes in the middle of a school term who doesn't know anyone. You sit him with a child who has problems. Did you know that he gets called names? No. Or even in the playground? No. I said, all right then. From today onwards, here says, oh, you will move my son from that child. You will prevent him from playing with him on the playgrounds. I don't want him anywhere near that child. It's a shame. Why should I want to distance my child from a child who has problems? I shouldn't have, but I had to protect my child. Do you know, from then onwards, Victor became the good boy. He ended up being the head boy of the school. He got his 11 plus. He was the last of the group that had to sit 11 plus. Some of you might know what 11 plus means. Yes? And he went to St. John's College. Now, had I not gone and confronted the school, he would have been what? Nothing. So that was my first confrontation with the system. And I'm going back 1969, December 1970. So things have changed, but changes slowly. Trying to get over barriers to empower yourself isn't easy. I don't like standing here talking to anyone now. That's because I've been a teacher. I changed career halfway around. That's why I can talk to you and project my voice. But not many women, and especially ethnic minority women, have the courage to stand up for themselves or speak in front of a group of people like yourselves. When I became involved in community voluntary activities, it was around the 1980. By then, I'd given up midwifery and I've gone to the Polytechnic. Some of you know what Polytechnic means. It's all gone now. Portsmouth University was a Polytechnic then. I went there then as a mature student. But only because I wanted to change myself. I wanted to have courage. I wanted to do other things, but I knew it had to come from me. No one is going to do it for me. So I went to evening classes. In those days, I think you paid very little or nothing to go to evening classes to get your O levels. You don't know what it means. Some of you do. O levels, not GCSEs, and A levels. And I did that, working full time, 2 children, working all my holidays to earn the extra money because I was penniless anyway, still penniless today. But I keep going. I then got the necessary qualifications and went to the Polytechnic to study and take a degree and went into teaching. That I had to give up things, social activities. Didn't have money anyway, so I couldn't go on holidays or anything like that. But it meant something for me to give up something in order to get what I eventually wanted, which was a change of career. Once I finished that training, I then started dabbling in, that's what I'll call it, dabbling in community voluntary activities. 1980 was the beginning. I began to visit for, it's not called UK, Citizens Advice Bureau in those days, Age Concern. I used to go and visit old ladies in their homes, talk to them or take them for a walk. That was my first foray into volunteering. I then got the necessary qualifications and went to the Polytechnic to study and take a degree and went into teaching. That I had to give up things, social activities. Didn't have money anyway, so I couldn't go on holidays or anything like that. But it meant something for me to give up something in order to get what I eventually wanted, which was a change of career. Once I finished that training, I then started dabbling in, that's what I'll call it, dabbling in community voluntary activities. 1980 was the beginning. I began to visit for, it's not called UK, Citizens Advice Bureau in those days, Age Concern. I used to go and visit old ladies in their homes, talk to them or take them for a walk. That was my first foray into voluntary activities. It wasn't enough. I was practically dragged into multicultural group by a friend, bless her soul, she's dead now, Rita Pieper. I don't know if you ever came across her, Lord Mayor. She was working at the university in those days as a... When I became involved in community voluntary activities, it was around the 1980. By then, I'd given up midwifery, and I've gone to the Polytechnic. Some of you know what Polytechnic means. It's all gone now. Portsmouth University was a Polytechnic then. I went there then as a mature student. But only because I wanted to change myself. I wanted to have courage. I wanted to do other things, but I knew it had to come from me. No one is going to do it for me. I've got to do something, and it means giving up things. So I went to evening classes. In those days, I think you paid very little or nothing to go to evening classes to get your O levels. You don't know what it means. Some of you do. O levels, not GCSEs, and A levels. And I did that, working full time, 2 children, working all my holidays to earn the extra money because I was penniless anyway, still penniless today. But I keep going. I then got the necessary qualifications and went to the Polytechnic to study and take a degree and went into teaching. That I had to give up things, social activities. Didn't have money anyway, so I couldn't go on holidays or anything like that. But it meant something for me to give up something in order to get what I eventually wanted, which was a change of career. Once I finished that training, I then started dabbling in, that's what I'll call it, dabbling in community voluntary activities. 1980 was the beginning. I began to visit for, it's not called UK, Citizens Advice Bureau in those days, Age Concern. I used to go and visit old ladies in their homes, talk to them or take them for a walk. That was my first foray into voluntary activities. It wasn't enough. I was practically dragged into multicultural group by a friend, bless her soul, she's dead now, Rita Pieper. I don't know if you ever came across her, Lord Mayor. She then came to my house one day, the day before AGM, and said, right, Marie, here's the folder, I quit. She was the secretary, treasury, president, you name it. She was doing the whole lot. She said, I quit. I'm not going. Tomorrow you take it and give it to them. I said, I didn't plan to go tomorrow. She said, well, it's tough. She just got into a car, drove off. So I had this folder on my hands. I had to take it in, and I did. And I told them, everybody looked around, and they were all aghast. What are they going to do? Rita did everything. What about you, Marie? I said, no, I'm doing nothing. I'm not even going to be a secretary. And Mohammed Riami was there. a kind of chair. And he said, well, who's going to be the chair? I said, well, you were the chair last year, you might as well be the chair. Oh no, if I'm going to be the chair, you have got to be vice chair, otherwise I'm not going to be the chair. Do you see how it's all, I'm being roped into things I didn't plan? I said, okay then, I'll be the vice chair. Unfortunately, I was rather too vocal in meetings. And I was pointing out things that weren't being done, and which so-and-so should have done, and so-and-so should have done. Because at the end of the year, Mohammed resigns, and who's to be the chair? Everybody pointed at me. So that's how I became the chair of the Portsmouth and South East Hampshire Multicultural Group all those years ago. And no one took it on. For 10 years, I was the chair. And that was the first time I began to encounter council officials. Because if you're a community voluntary group, you've got to make yourself known. You've got to get things from the council to help support you. We were all volunteers. And the only way you get anything is to get to know them. I had to learn to talk to officials. I forget councillors because I never came across them. The council officers, I had to go to them, find out who was in charge of cultural activities, and those were the people that I had to address. It was a steep learning curve, and I can't tell you how many no's I got from them, how many battles I had for them to recognize that I'm the chair of the group and we want XYZ, we need you to support us. And I can tell you, I also shed many tears when I've gone home because they would not listen to me. Because they were all men. In those days, it was a male-dominated city council. I don't know about the councillors because I didn't have anything to do with them, but the officers, they were all male. So all those years, I fought with the men. I was a woman with this group. Caribbean island, those days, there was a woman chair. There weren't any women's groups amongst the Asian groups. They're all led by men. They were listening to the men who chaired all the others, but not to us, the women. But I had to continue. Talking about having confidence, it's been thrust on me. I've had to have confidence to say, I want, help me, please help me. I want to learn, and it meant learning the language you use to address the council officers, for them to see what you're doing. And when they wanted to do things, cultural things, for your area, usually African and Caribbeans, they knew best what my culture as an African is, or as a Caribbean. Now, none of them comes from that background. None of them. They were all Caucasian, Portsmouth people doing good for Portsmouth people. But they knew best what my culture should look like in the cultural scene. When I became or founded African Women's Forum in 1995, it was because of the absence of where African women can meet and talk with each other, laugh, support each other, and bemoan what we left behind. A social gathering. I knew it wouldn't last after a year. We can't keep meeting and talking and eating our food. That wasn't going to sustain us. We then started with Black History Month activities. And so from 1996 onwards, we fielded African cultural activities in schools. We went into schools, we went into community centers, we did things at the New Theatre Royal, and each year it got bigger and bigger. But what we wanted was for the City Council to take it over and spread it over the 12 months, not just October bring it, do something for 1 month and put it away. It didn't happen. And the last year was 2006, when we had an excellent, I thought, activity at the New Theatre Royal. Unfortunately, unbeknown to me, one of the members got on stage after we'd finished singing our a cappella singing songs and said, by the way, before Marie Costa gets on the stage, I ought to tell you all that she paid for us to be here, not the city council. And there was all sorts of noises. And I was furious with her afterwards. She shouldn't have said that without permission. But she did. One of the officers who was there then tackled me afterwards, said, I don't believe you. I said, well, go and ask whoever you want to believe. Lele shouldn't have said that. But she did. City Council then wrote to me and said, we will refund you the money. You shouldn't have paid it out of your pocket. And they did. They did. But you know, since then, we came away from Black History Month because it's not fulfilling what we want. The next year, we had a year-long activity about the bicentenary of the abolition of the slave trade. And it was an eye-opener. The whole city were involved. We launched it at the Guildhall steps. We had plays at the Naval Museum, at the Portsmouth Museum, and the New Theatre Royal, and we traveled to Hull, Liverpool, Bristol to see all the museums. But it was a changing period. We became well known, and people accepted, the city accepted and welcomed us. Since then, we have been welcomed, and we know that we are appreciated for what we do voluntarily for the city to bring the culture into our community. It is our community. We work here, we live here, we pay our taxes, we do everything. And so we feel honored to be Portsmouthians working for the good of our city and promoting it. When I see my friends in London and tell them about Portsmouth, they look at me, where's Portsmouth? I said, well, if you go as far as you can go in England, before you fall into the sea, that's Portsmouth.